I'm Ginny Robertson, founder of the On Purpose Woman Global Community and founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine. I'm talking with Dr. Pamela J. Pine, founder and director of Stop the Silence, about her article in the May-June issue of On Purpose Woman magazine. Pamela, welcome. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, before we start this really important conversation, tell our viewers a little bit about you.
I was a middle-class kid who initially got introduced to international development or international programming, I guess, because I was chosen as our high school's international exchange student. So at 16, I flew off to India without having ever been in an airplane. Wow. And I got a taste of the world. After college, I joined Peace Corps, and I was sent to Yemen, and I worked in a leprosy hospital for 2.5 years. And then I was hooked. After that, I went to Ethiopia and worked on leprosy issues there for a while. Then I was in 2 years in Morocco working on economic development programming for women with low incomes. I was in Egypt for a while. Then I was in Japan doing some research for 1.5 years, and then I came back to the United States. And I continued.
You did all this before coming back, or you just were in and out?
No, that was pretty straight. I was back in the US for 9 months in between. Where was I? Yemen and Morocco. I was back in the US for 9 months, and the rest was straight. It was almost 10 years overseas, and then came back to the shock of the United States after all of that. And I continued in international health and development, working on my education in public health, and then went on to a PhD in international health communication. In the year 2000, and I was working on all kinds of issues, literally all over the world. It was fascinating, wonderful. I've really enjoyed it, and I've continued to do that all these years. In 2000, however, I got introduced to the issue of child sexual abuse and other adverse childhood experiences. And that was through information that came across my screen in the year 2000 from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And Ginny, I just started reading and reading and reading, and was horrified, because with all my education, I mean, people call me overeducated, which is true. With all my education, I hadn't had one course in childhood trauma. Wow. Nor had my colleagues. And that was amazing to me, particularly given, Ginny, that in the US, the statistics are that 1 out of 4 girls and 1 out of 6 boys is sexually abused by the time they're 18 years old. That's not even including all the other adverse childhood experiences or ACEs that occur. So I was hooked. I ultimately started a program, an advocacy program that turned into a nonprofit organization incorporated in 2004 called Stop the Silence, Stop Child Sexual Abuse. And then in 2021, in January of 2021, actually December of 2020, I dissolved the organization. And the organization, lock, stock, and barrel, all of its areas of focus became a department of the Institute on Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. And so I've been working as the director of that department since January of 2021. And that's a very quick thumbnail sketch.
Wow. Yes. And remember, y'all, watching this is about the article that Pamela wrote for the magazine. And the title of the article is Making a Difference, My Story and Stop the Silence. So you've already heard a little bit about how all this got started, and you go into a lot more detail about your background and other things in the article. So please check that out. But oh my goodness, I mean, I've met you a few times. We've been on Zoom together a few times, but you know, when I read the article, I was just blown away by not just your expertise and the way you take action. I mean, once you grab hold of something or something grabs hold of you, it sounds like you take action, but also all the ways that you've taken action since you were 16, you know, and I think you wrote in your article that you came from this family that did things that talked about helping others. Would you say a few
Right.
words about that and what that was like growing up?
Yeah, my parents were truly extraordinary. Not that we didn't have all the semi craziness that every family has. We had ours, but they were extraordinary in lots of different ways. My dad was a scientist, he was a chemist, and my mom was very artsy. She was a speech therapist and she did a lot of theater. She was a really good actress.
Mm,
So the Scientific American magazines laid next to the art books on the coffee tables.
wow.
I was given every opportunity, both scientifically and artistically. And that's an unusual way to grow up, I think, because it forms your brain.
Mhm.
And so music, painting, all kinds of instruments. Anything I asked for to play, they gave me lessons for, except the harp. My mother told me it was twice my size, and she wasn't going to get me a harp. I was a kid, you know. Uh, but singing and flute and bass viol and recorder and a host of other, a piano, a host of other instruments. And then from the time I was 6, they enrolled me in painting classes, which I took through high school, the same place, the same teacher. And so I became a pretty good artist, while my dad was really encouraging with regard to a focus on the scientific areas. He used to bring home the experiments from his lab that wouldn't explode, that would turn colors if you held it up to the sun. You know, it was extraordinary. It was an extraordinary way to grow up. It really was. And my mom was, and dad, but particularly my mom was very socially oriented. So the expectation that if you can do something within your community, you do it. My mother started a nonprofit in her 80s. So I miss them both. They're both gone. I miss them both. They were amazing. They were amazing parents. They were amazing people.
Well,
I
that's
was lucky.
so heart, it's so heartwarming, and I can, you know, so different than, not in negative ways necessarily, but so, I mean, I'm not coming from a negative place here, but you know, often when you're offered one thing or the other, you know, it's like you need to do this. Nobody makes a living doing art. You shouldn't waste your time on art. You got this opportunity to see both sides and to use,
Right,
like you say, your whole brain in
right.
beautiful ways. And I am imagining that they were also encouraging about whatever you wanted to do with that.
And that it also was amazing. I mean, when I was going off first to India, not one negative word. Go enjoy yourself. You know, I was going with an
Yeah.
organization and they trusted that. But when I was going off to Yemen, Yemen is tough. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's literally, Ginny, like walking into, in this was 1970s, the late 1970s. It was like walking into the Bible, truly. Yemen, at the point that I arrived in Yemen, which was 1977, the country literally politically had been open to the world for 7 years. 94% of the population did not read or write. There were very few schools in except for Quranic schools, for example, that was pretty much for the boys. The facilities, electricity, running water, sewage, largely didn't exist. And again, my parents said nothing. They said not. There was no warning. There was no uh-oh. There was no, you know, be careful. There was none of that. So
Hmm.
I marched into these places reading what I could and taking that information with me without any sense of dire. or emergency or crisis, or it was all, whoa, this is new. What can I,
Curiosity, just pure curiosity, right?
right, exactly,
And that has served
exactly,
you so well going forward about, because a bunch of us could have seen that article from the CDC on child sexual abuse, but it hit something in you, and your curiosity made you go look more. And then you went further, and then you went deeper, and then you went wider, and then you said,
right,
I need to do something, right?
right. It was
You-
also, yeah, I'm going to give a credit too to my sister who had
Yeah.
started an organization. Now it's probably 30, 40 years old, called Survivors Healing Center, which ultimately, over the last 15 years, maybe 15 years ago or so, became a part of Family and Children's Services of Santa Cruz County, California. But she also, she was a therapist, and she and a close colleague of hers were both seeing this idea of child sexual abuse arising in their individual work. My sister being a therapist, people would come in with alcohol problems, depression problems, anxiety problems, drug problems, and ultimately, one after another, they would get to a base of child sexual abuse. And her colleague was a workshop presenter and a poet and a writer, and she was seeing people write memoirs over and over and over again that talked about their histories of child sexual abuse. And they got together and said, "What's going on?" Now, this is way back before really anybody was willing to talk about this issue. And they started a nonprofit. And when I saw this from CDC, I called up my sister and I said, we should partner our organizations. I was working for an international nonprofit organization at the time in Washington, D.C. Let's partner. I wrote a grant and we got it. We got it. Yeah. And that was the start of it all.
So your sister picked up the mantle as well. It wasn't just you.
Yeah,
Oh,
she started the mantle.
yeah. But I mean,
She
from your parents, I guess, it
Oh
trickled,
yeah,
trickled
oh
down.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. My parents taught two girls growing up in the 1950s and 60s that they could do anything that they wanted to do. Really unusual, extraordinary. And we both took it and ran with it because we didn't know we weren't supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of mind blowing in a way because, you don't know what your limitations are if nobody's putting them on you. And
Exactly.
then once somebody tries to, you're probably strong enough in it that it doesn't land like it might land if you weren't. I'm sure there were times when you got put in your place by somebody they thought or whatever, and it may
Absolutely.
have stung and it may have hurt and it may have, like felt like somebody just slashed you, but you
Absolutely.
always had that other thing to pull back on, right? That says,
Yeah.
but I know who
Didn't
I am
didn't
here.
didn't work out too well for some boyfriends though.
Yeah. I'm sure they underestimated you in some way.
Yeah, there are
Oh, that's
stories
funny.
there as well. Yeah,
So let's go back to the Stop the Silence then. You created Stop the Silence in 2000 and then 2004
he was
officially, I
incorporated.
believe. And now
Yeah.
it's part of a large organization where you're the director of that piece. So you're still running that piece of
Right,
it.
right.
What is the exact focus of what that piece of what you're running? What exactly is it, the services that you provide or what you do?
Yeah, the focus of Stop the Silence has stayed exactly at where it was when it all began. Advocacy, education, training, and policy development and reform, those four areas. In advocacy, over the years, we've done very large advocacy events that have invited major media. We had an event called The Race to Stop the Silence from 2000, every April from 2004 to 2013. And it attracted Channel 4, 7, 9, public television, Maryland Public TV, as well as the broader PBS. We had CNN come out and do some taping. We had magazines across the country. We had radio across the country. And at its height, we had 1,200 runners and walkers with running with and walking with Stop the Silence, Stop Child Sexual Abuse on their backs. We had those backlit posters in the metro.
Mhm.
We had those. So there was major media, and that was wonderful. So major events, that was years ago. It stopped in 2013. Basically, some people wrote me, Ginny, and said, "Where's the race to stop the silence?" in 2014. And I wrote back and I said, either the race was going to kill me or I was going to kill it. I voted on me. It was an enormous thing to
Cool.
pull
Can
off.
imagine.
It
Yeah.
really was. But we have done a lot of training to all kinds of audiences, teachers and physicians and nurses, other clinicians, educators, social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, police, you name it. We've done training for. And we've also, or education and training. And then policy, we contribute largely to other people's initiatives, pushing through legislation on the local, state, and national levels. And currently, Ginny, I'm really happy to say that we have finished major piece of work, and it is currently live, the first part of it, and that is a certificate to master's degree in child protection in partnership with the University of Applied Research and Development, or UARD. They are based in the UK, but the person who heads it lives in New Zealand, who I met in New Zealand through his wife, who was working with me and others on a training for New Zealanders. And he started talking to me about getting this program together. So the certificate aspect of it, which is a prerequisite for the master's, the certificate has been live for a year. And we are literally this week going into our 4th cohort. And today, June 4th, is it? Is today June 4th, right? June
Yes.
4th. Today, June 4th, is the last day of registration, open registration for the 4th cohort of the certificate program. And the master's program will start and go live in January. So anybody who's taken the certificate so far, and there are a couple of dozen, 2-3 dozen people so far, they will have access to go on to the master's if they choose to do that in January. It's a very comprehensive program. It's really well put together, I must say. I mean, I'll give myself a little pat. We recruited amazing people at the top of their fields all across the spectrum in adverse childhood experiences, from what is it to protection, to prevention, to treatment, to communication and policy issues. It's really comprehensive. It involves these amazing people, all who gave up their time pro bono to develop 1/2 to 1 hour presentations on all these different issues. And the course itself has those presentations, it has background readings, it has quizzes, easy quizzes, that's just to try to make you think. It has interactive programming between the students online. It's all online, it's all at your own pace, it's highly affordable. I mean, we slashed. It's really accessible. And we have a tagline for this program, and that is to put the world on the same page with regard to these issues. So it is available anywhere in the world. And for the global South countries, the tuition is less than half of the already very affordable tuition for the Westerners. So we want everybody, we've so far had people from Latin America, Asia, Africa, and Oceania, be involved in taking this certificate course. So I can give you now or later or both,
Say
how.
it now, and then we're going to make sure that the information is also in the text of this video. So just tell people how because today's the last day to register
Right.
for the certificate program. How can they get more information on that?
So they can go to the Stop the Silence website on IVAT's website. It's our page on IVAT's website, and that is https // or / whichever way that goes, www.ivatcenters.org. That's IV as in Victor, AT centers with an S.org /stop the silence. And all the information on what this course is about, these courses or this program is about, and how to register is there.
Wow. Please go check that out if this speaks to you at all. And again, that information, that website link is in the text of this video. Pamela, I'm blown away. I mean, I read your article, and that alone just gave me so much insight into you and your heart and your brain and your work and your commitment. But, just talking with you about it in person live here, it's just the impact. I mean, how does it feel when you just kind of look back and go, oh my gosh, from that one seemingly random kind of thing that happened to now? I mean,
there's two things, and this is very honest, and this is from the heart. I'm really proud of what we've done, and it's never enough.
Yeah.
And I hold those two things together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We've made a difference in I don't know how many people's lives, and I'm really, really happy about that and proud that we've done it. But Ginny, this problem is so big. And as I say to people, if we change the way we treat children, whether it's sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect, or exposing them to other types of childhood traumas, which include a parent being incarcerated or illicit drug abuse and alcohol abuse in the home, or domestic violence in front of children, all of those are traumatic events to children. If we changed how that happens so that we're preventing it and treating it if it does happen, Ginny, truly, we'd have a different world. And I tend to use a couple of anecdotes here. And one is, did you and your listeners, do you see the film Night at the Museum with Ben Stiller? Did you ever see that movie? Do you remember all the characters? What is it, midnight, they come alive, and you've got all these, you've got Teddy Roosevelt on his horse, and you've got all these characters running around, including Genghis Khan, right? Who's known as a rapist and a pillager, along with his band of men. Toward the end of the movie, Genghis Khan curls up in Ben Stiller's arms. And Ben Stiller says, I know you had a terrible childhood, or words to that effect. The fact is that I will nearly guarantee that every dictator in this world had that terrible childhood. We know a lot about Stalin's childhood, for example. We can follow that. That's historical fact. But you can do that pretty much with any dictator. And we'd have a different world. People would be treating each other differently. They would be treating their children differently. The world would be more understanding and peaceful. And I'm not Pollyanna here. I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot. So I'm not saying that this is an easy stroke of the pen or wave of the wand, but it's something certainly to work toward.
Something to aspire to, for sure.
Exactly.
Yes. And by the way, I think Pollyanna got a bad rap.
I agree with you.
You know,
I agree with
what was
you.
her
I do
crime?
agree.
She
I
saw the
agree.
good in everybody, right? She and
I
oh,
agree.
darn her, she's so naive.
I agree with you.
I've been called that before in my life, and I
Yeah,
started to see that's kind of a compliment, actually,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
It doesn't
yeah,
mean you
yeah,
don't
yeah.
see the world. It just means that you
Right,
expect better.
right.
Expect
True,
better.
true.
Well, let's see. How can I, well, we already have the website. So do you have anything else? Can they see other information on Stop the Silence on that same site?
Oh, yeah, the
Okay.
book, our book, and I'm just gonna grab it. We've got a book, it came out last year. It's called Stop the Silence, Thriving After Child Sexual Abuse.
Mhm.
And it's available on Amazon and written by 23 international authors from around the globe. There are 9 different nations represented in this book with their stories. And at the end of every chapter is a piece called The Practice, where the authors provide information about their own healing. So this book is geared towards the survivors to help them, but also toward those people who are trying to help the survivors,
Mhm. Okay.
so that they would know the various kinds of modalities that are available that work with survivors.
Mhm.
The survivors are telling you this worked for me, this worked for me. These are things that therapists and guides can use or suggest to help others heal. So there's that. Yeah.
And I will make sure that that link to the Amazon
Okay.
page will be in the text of this video as well. So as we wrap up, what are your final thoughts about what do you want to leave our listeners with on this topic? And maybe something that we could be more aware of ourselves out there in the world.
There are signs often, not always, but usually I would say there are signs and symptoms of a kid in trouble.
Mhm.
Knowing those signs and symptoms and knowing what to do about it if you suspect something is critical to your family, to your community, to your society, and to your country. These issues cost just the United States of America alone tens of billions of dollars in cleanup, in doctors and law costs and lawyers and judges and police and social workers and therapists, et cetera, et cetera. So I would wholeheartedly say, even if this is not your field, learn something about this. Learn how it affects kids, the adolescents they become, and the adults they become. Learn the signs and the symptoms so that you can really help quell the tide of this level of abuse and destruction of us. It's not just the kids, it's us. I will guarantee you that every single one of the people who are listening and watching this know someone that has been sexually or otherwise abused in their childhood.
Yeah.
So there's that old adage, we can be the change that we want to see, and we can. So I invite you to take the course if you'd like to, the program, certainly, but there are other ways as well of learning just the basics. I also do online training and in-person training. If anybody is interested in having me just show up for their group, I'm more than happy to do that. And I can do that in an hour or I can do that in 5 days. Your choice. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And you know, everyone doesn't have to step up and start an organization that's still
Right.
going strong 20 years later. But like Mother Teresa said, we can all do that one thing that may seem small, but that typically builds on something else.
Right.
And so just awareness is key, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So nice of you to do this, Ginny. Really, thank you so much for inviting me. I really do
Oh,
appreciate it.
you're very welcome. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your wise words, and for doing such important work that a lot of people, we just don't want to talk about it necessarily. When I put the blinders on and say, well, that's not really happening. And, you know, there's been so much, you know, the big blow up in Maryland in the last year or two when the veil has been taken off, so to speak, of the church and a lot of what was going on there. And I think it's in people's faces more now than it's ever been. You
And
know,
it is changing.
it is
As I said
changing.
before we
It is changing.
began with taping this, Ginny, I had said in 2000, nobody wanted to talk to me.
Yeah.
In 2024, Verizon, who that shows up on a call to help me fix something on my phone line, asks me what Stop the Silence is and congratulates me.
Wow.
It's there's been a sea change. It's not
Willing
big
to
enough.
hear it, right? They were willing to hear it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People used to, if I said that I'd call up and say, hello, this is Dr. Pamela Pine from Stop the Silence. We work on child sexual abuse and other adverse childhood experiences. People, when we were using landlines back when, people would literally, I knew that nobody could hear them because they were on landline. They would literally lower their voices as if something shameful was going
Oh,
on.
wow. Wow. Ooh, that says so much. That says so much, doesn't it? And I'm so
Yeah.
glad. And it's changing because of people like you, Pamela.
Thank you.
People who are willing, when I think about, back to that, the thing in Maryland, the women who are still doing that work, who experienced this, they graduated in the same year I did. And they are still for 50 plus years have been trying to get people to listen and trying to,
Right.
and that's what it takes. That's what it
Right.
takes when it really matters to
Yeah.
you. And again, not everybody has to go do that, but everybody,
Right.
we can all be more knowledgeable. We can all be more educated just a little bit. Or if we see
Yeah.
something that doesn't feel right, find out why it doesn't feel right,
Absolutely.
and then do something.
Absolutely.
Yes. So thank you so much again for this important work and for sharing with all of us today. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And vice versa.
And thank you for watching the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show. And for more information on the On Purpose Women Global Community and magazine, please click on the links in this video and be sure to check out Dr. Pamela's website for all that she's offering, and be sure to read her article in the magazine. Those links are in the text of this video. Thanks again. Sorry. Okay, I'm talking now on the video, but I'm here because I hardly ever record without a live. There it is.